Welcome to the Double Shot Drone Podcast, hosted by Davy Kieran and Mike Berthold, two professional Florida drone pilots and entrepreneurs. I mean, I can edit recording. Okay, welcome back to Double Shot Drones with Davy Kieran. Now you're on the bottom, Davy. And our guest today is Ken Fleming.
Part two.
From Recon Dive Recovery. We just did a podcast with him, about a 40-minute podcast, and this is part two because we just can't get enough of him.
We've got more stories than tape.
Absolutely.
So let's
we might have to do
forgive
three.
the pun, but let's dive right in.
All right. So where we left off was returning 9 months later to dive for more remains of Karen Moore, who we'd only found from the midsection up. The police divers had found, and they had possibly uncovered another vehicle. So we're going back 9 months later at the unofficial request of one of the detectives who was also just about to retire. So he really wanted to, solve one of the theories. They thought they had seen another car. You had 5 dive teams, 3 weeks, stirring up all the silt, trying to recover what they could, multiple lines all the way down there to follow search lines, trying to bring up what they could from her. And they thought they saw another car. So I'm down there with a metal detector and I'm sweeping back and forth. And every time I find what I think is a rock or something, I'm feeling it for what is this? And I found, a piece of her cervical spine, lower spine, like belly button and below, and tucked it in. And while I'm tucking it in, my metal detector went loose, as we had mentioned before, and it hit on the vehicle. I've got 6 inches underneath the sand. I've got the roof of the vehicle. So I tuck this in really carefully, and I start digging, and I find part of the roof line. So the center square of the roof line is missing, almost like someone surgically took the midsection of the roof and just lifted it off the car. So what I'm getting is the curved edges all the way back around, but no center. The center is filled with dirt. So I start digging and I kind of hit my limit. Then I go up, change tanks, tell my partner what I found, show everyone, that we've recovered some bones. I turned over the skeletal remains to Vern, who was running drone operations on shore. So now he's doing a drone shot, and I've got a killer drone shot. Maybe you can clip it in later, where he's over the top, and the boat. Yep, the boat looks, like an inch long, and there's this giant plume, and that's me digging by hand underneath, and about.
I think that you showed me that shot. I think,
yeah,
in a text, yeah.
Yep. So I'm digging for this. We're changing out tanks and digging. Mike joined the dive, and I went back down and I started digging, kind of at a 45-degree angle up to my elbow into the muck, and I found another what I thought was piece of bone, and it turned out to be a piece of the pelvis, about 16, 18 inches under the hard packed bottom. So we know that there's more of her down there, and what that does is it allows Davy PD to go, hey, there's more victim down there. Now we can fund additional dives and searching. They had actually thought about cordoning off part of it with caissons and draining, and it was, like $50,000 to do so. But at least this allows them to fund additional divers. So the other thing is, what is this other car? And what's going on down there? So I start my excavation. While I'm doing that, Mike located a third bone that we believe to actually be animal bone and not connected. So all those bones were given to Vern, and when we called the police, we handed over custody to them. And they have some evidence rules like keeping it in water and stuff like that. But that was all sent off to the medical examiner for DNA. And if it proves to be our victim, then of course there will be additional dives, we hope. And also we notified Christina Baber, which is her daughter, who's now an adult and has babies of her own. Hey, we found more of your mom. We're going to continue to look, and we're going to try to find this other car. So I found this other car, and I start excavating down what I believe to be the back of it, hoping to find a license plate. What they're hoping to prove is this car related? Is there another victim? Or the bones that I found, maybe another victim? Did we have a serial killer? There was another nurse, because Karen was a nurse. There was another nurse that disappeared in that area about a year prior. So did the killer know both of these nurses because they had similar jobs and put them both in the same spot? So there's a lot of possibilities there. So I go down the back of the car, roof curvature down to where that there should be a window and like a tailgate, and there's no glass. It's gone. So it's all dirt. I find the lower end of the tailgate and I keep digging. At this point, arms fully extended, upside down. I'm digging from the tips of my fingers up to my waist. I'm digging a hole just big enough to fit my body into by hand. And I just happened to come down the center of the vehicle and air towards the driver's side. Don't know why, because vehicles have their plates in different spots, usually in the center of the bumper. I felt an outline for where a rectangle for where a plate would be on the back lower driver's side of the vehicle. So I just kept digging for that, and the vehicle's right side up, and I finally felt a plate. So I did 4 dives over 3 hours and came up with that license plate. And so what's cool about that is they get to go back and say, okay, did the killer maybe buy this car as a test vehicle? This car went in about 11 months before the victim did. So if they can prove that the killer maybe owned this other vehicle, maybe he bought a test vehicle, put it in the water to see how long it would take to go down. And then 11 months later, he's ready to do his plot, and he kills his wife, allegedly.
Yeah.
What that does, if it proves to be true, if there's any link between him and that vehicle, whether a family member bought it, whatever, it proves premeditation, because you can no longer say we scuffled, she was killed accidentally, I didn't know what to do, I threw the car in the pond. Now it's, hey, I had a plan and I tested it. And so anyway, that's all for the police. I'm just speculating, and I'm not accusing anyone of murder.
Right. So you do work with the police sometimes.
Yeah, so we did find that, and that caused a little bit of discontent amongst the Davie PD dive team, because these amateurs show up and find things that they couldn't find for 9 months. We also understand that they respond to immediate crimes, immediate victim in the water, rescues, things like that, recoveries where there was a chase that ended in water. They don't have time to do this sleuthing type of dives that we're doing.
Cold case. So they put them away for a reason, right?
Yeah. So we did that for them, and well, there's a little bit of talk amongst them and the detectives, and then attitudes change. Hey guys, thanks for what you did. We'll take it from here and all that. So, and then that detective retired, and now he's back on as a consultant, but he has more answers for that case. We got to meet with Christina and her family, her husband, her twins, her mother-in-law, and we got to meet this beautiful family that we've been servicing. So even though I didn't initially find her mother, I did find more of her mother, and we know that more of her is down there. And if the police haven't gone back, if they close out the file, then I personally will go back and continue to dive for remains, because I have their daughter's blessing to try to bring back more of her mom. So I'll do that. And if we find it, it will go through police channels for identification and all that. So that was a Friday for the beginning of our search week, and Vern out there with his drones as well. And then the next day, searching for a missing gentleman named Borges Diaz in Miami, we came across a location that was turnpike turning towards Miami Airport, a little strip of water there. And we had already searched everything where his vehicle had been picked up on license plate readers and cameras and things. And there's no cell ping because the cell ran out. He was missing for hours and hours, tens of hours. So now we're just searching everything we can up and down the turnpike, and we have a debris field that's the right color. It matches his silver Hyundai. And so we think we found Borges Diaz. We know we found him. There's a debris field leading right towards the water between palm trees. And we're getting amped up, and after a while I said, the answers are down there. Just do the dive. So decide to go ahead and do the dive. And right before the dive, we realized those parts are from a Toyota, so it's not his Hyundai. So it was another wreck in the same area that was the right color, the right everything, but not the right make and model. But we do this dive, so now we're thinking, maybe it's some other wreck or a stolen vehicle that was dumped. And there's a vehicle upside down in 20-something feet of water. At about 17 feet, it starts turning green. And we're doing this at night, pitch black, but it starts turning green in my dive light and gets that hydrogen sulfide layer. And it smells like rotten eggs. The visibility gets warbly for a little bit until you pass through. As soon as you pass through that layer, it gets really cold and even darker, and gets into the silt layer. And now you're getting down to about touch. As I descended on the driver's side, so I did an assessment of the vehicle to find out make, model, type. And it was a Pontiac, and I thought it was a different type, but I kind of figured out it was a hatchback looking thing. Come around to the driver's side, and I can make out the curvature of the steering wheel above the silt, and right in front of that, what looked almost like a child's ball or something like that. So as I'm reaching in to do my, where is the seatbelt engaged or not? Are there keys in the ignition? Was it stolen? Are there any remains? I reached across this ball and I felt an orbital socket. And that was the skeletal remains, the skull of this victim that we found in Miami.
Josh.
So that's that sticks with you, and I've been around this stuff before, so I handle it okay. But it's it's
That would freak me out. That would yeah.
And it's a big responsibility to treat those remains like a crime scene, and a big responsibility to treat them reverently, with respect,
humanely and reverently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I immediately know it's a crime scene. I know that I need to back off, but I don't want their divers to lose anything. I don't want them to get down there and disturb it and lose any major parts. So I have a reel with me, so I tied off to the steering wheel some cave line that will bring them right down to where the remains are. I have a like a lob string type bag that they can collect remains with, and so I tied off to that. We come up to the surface. We have confirmation that we have a vehicle. We have a victim, and we put a float on it so that their divers can follow it down. And at that point, we have to call the police divers in to do their work. So we met up with Miami-Dade PD, great dive team, 4 of them covering that whole area, which is just amazing. And it's full-time. All they do is dive. And they were just the greatest partners. They want to meet with us, which we've done. We've done more cases for them. We've done more work for them. And, now it's a first name basis. I can text my buddy over there and be like, hey, we found this, this, and this.
Good.
No victims, but hey, go pull these at your leisure. He'll text me back, hey, what's the GPS on that? Or did you put a marker on it? Those kind of things. So good relationship with him. So that was the 5th victim we found. And that was Vern with Hilo and Sub.
So 5 victims in how many years, Ken?
5 victims in 1 year, over 130 cars.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
We're the most prolific sonar team of 2023. We don't have the most solved cases because other teams have been doing this for 4, 5, 6 years in multiple, large groups. But we've worked some of the hardest cases, and we've solved some cases that the other teams have not had to put into.
You're not the only team in Florida, though. You're
we're partnered up. The Florida teams are the main Florida teams are partnered up. So it's myself, ReconDiveRecovery.com, Sunshine State Sonar, which is my buddy Mike and his brother John, and a few other folks that help us, and then Vern with Hilo and Sub. So that was Vern's first body recovery case, and we have a dive flag that's kind of and you can see it up here on my screen. It's a black dive flag, kind of like when the officers wear the black line over their shield. So yeah.
Right.
So we have that, and that's an honor we bestow upon each other when someone's found their first victim. So Vern earned his black flag on that one, and so we that's something that we've handed out to a few other teams as well.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yep. So like Doug Bishop, formerly of Adventures with Purpose, now with United Search Corps, he worked with us. I presented him a patch for all the recovery work he had done over the years. He's done a great job. He came to work with us twice, and in one of those cases, we found 43 vehicles in one weekend, 32 in one body of water next to the Miami airport.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
No victims. They were all stolen, but we did find a 1940s Mercury 8 on its wheels, and we found a armored cash in transit van. So run flat tires, bulletproof
Miami,
windows.
here we come. Yep.
Cocaine cowboy days.
Cocaine cowboy days for sure.
Somebody heisted that van. But typically, and I could show you guys some pictures, like when we found Robert Heika's vehicle, this was one that we found above surface, and that's typically not the case. But we found his vehicle there, and then came around the side and saw it like that. And then
so a lot of these are revealed like when the water gets lower, and
that is the only one we've had like that. Typically they're in deep enough water and dark enough water that you can't see them at all. This was a fluke. Every now and then there's a few folks that go on Google Earth and go looking for cars, and most of the time they send us out, we don't find anything, but every now and then there's a car that sure enough you can see it on Google Earth. So I'll go down there and dive in the murky water and identify the plate. You can see the plate coming up there. So we'll go down there, we'll dive, and that's an easy one. That's good looking water from where I come from.
Yeah.
And then we'll do the recovery work. We've got the sheriffs out there doing the pole. And we do a lot of mapping as well. I can throw that up on the screen real quick. We use SARTOPO, which is a search and rescue topographical map system. We put the cell phone towers on there. We mark all the bodies of water in red. The ones that we put a bobber into that are not deep enough for a car, we'll mark them as orange, that maybe we return to them because they're not cleared, but they're most likely ruled out from depth. And then the ones that we clear will mark green. So this was Orlando. We were looking for Robert Heike because they thought maybe he was murdered in Orlando before he came back, and that maybe his cell phone was brought back to throw off the authorities. That was a foul play scenario.
So those green dots on that map were
those were cleared.
cleared?
We did 40 bodies of water in one night. We searched all around Disney. That's International Drive area around Disney and around all the tourists. And you'll find that nobody wants you searching for bodies in the middle of Disney tourists.
No.
So we started at 9 o'clock at night. We ran to 9 in the morning, and then we went out to Waffle House. But we'll look at old locations. We'll do search sectors, and we'll map things and clear them as we go. So you can see his school and his home are both marked there in orange. The other orange by the purple, that's where his previous house was. So we'll look at old addresses, because with dementia patients, sometimes they go back to their old homes. They'll also, if they're left-handed, they'll turn the car towards the left. If they see water, to them it looks like a road that continues, or in their mind they're driving down a country road and they're going down I-4. So there's the loss of perception on that will lead them into water. And you can see that these were some of the ones we were searching. You can see the white car there in the middle, which is where we actually found his vehicle, and in this tiny little pond. And it's a canal type pond. So his car went in, swerved through that road. We think it went in reverse, hit a little embankment, and jumped over where there had been 10, 12 other wrecks. Two were fatal. There were two crosses set up at either end of this turn where there was a motorcycle and I think a truck accident or a Jeep accident or something. But it's an area that people come to take that turn fast. It's fun. While we were there was hot rods and motorcycles going through and all that. But he hit that, flew 75 yards, cleared all the trees, landed perfectly sideways without damaging the car. The only thing was there was one mirror was missing. We believe it's in the water, and there was a forehead impact on the glass, so he had hit the glass. But when I did that dive assessment, when I'm going around the car to take a look at it, we didn't see any remains in the front seat. I thought maybe he had slumped over, but I couldn't find him by feel on this one in the driver's side. Driver's side window was open. So, he possibly could have gotten out of there. When they hoisted the vehicle, his torso hit the front seats. You could see his head and torso, and even though he's in the water for 2.5 years, he hadn't gone skeletal yet. So there was still, his musculature was still holding together, and he hit the back seat. So he had had an impact on the glass, became conscious that he's in the water, didn't realize his window was open, probably from head wounds and possibly intoxicated. We don't know, but turned towards the back because that's where the air bubble is. And we see this in a lot of cases. We've seen this in big famous cases where victims in the back, it must have been foul play. Not necessarily. They could have come to and crawled in the back because that's where the air bubble is. So they don't think to get out sideways. When we saw the car there with the window open, we thought he was off in the woods somewhere. Then he came to, it was shallow. He popped out, it's 2 feet to come up, and he's in the woods, and we have to go find him. But it turned out he was in the back, and the detective looked inside and said, "I can recognize the haircut. That was my 6th grade teacher." And at that point, we were asked to completely back off, but we were able to send him home that day. And that's an amazing feeling. So those were our big finds. And then I started getting into more drone stuff, which is where I ran into you guys. Started working with Vern. I developed, my ROV. Let me show that to you real quick one more time. We talked about it in the last one. So it's like a Harbor Freight type case, and it's literally on a child's boogie board.
Look at that. Look at
With
that.
a pair of thrusters.
Look at the thrusters on there.
And there's the sonar head.
That's amazing.
and all in a little case and with a handle, so I can pick it up and set it in the water and go.
Ken, where's your home operation again?
So I've got I go back and forth across the state between St. Pete, right down the street from you guys,
St. Pete, right? Yeah,
and
okay.
and then Melbourne Beach. I probably spend more time in Melbourne Beach, but the cool thing is I traverse the state, about once a week or more, so I get to throw a few searches in. So I'll keep this in my car, in a little cement mixing tub to collect the water, and if I see something I want to run, I can throw it in as long as everything's charged.
Okay.
So I can watch it from shore. I can also record onto the chip and put that into software. And Vern has taken some of that and been able to take our sonar soundings and overlay them with Google Maps, so you can see the map, the shoreline, the water, and then in black and white, you can see all the cars lined up. It's an amazing shot, and I don't think anyone else is doing it. So now I have this one. His is a little bit longer, but a little bit faster. So now we have dual above surface sonar drones that we can run, ROVs. So I call this one, you're going to laugh, but I call this one the telemetry operated above surface sonar transmission ROV, aka toaster.
Toaster.
Ah.
And I built a monitoring station that I call the onshore vehicle and vessel video evidence node, or the oven. So I have my toaster oven, and that's my little unit there that I like to run. And it's a great, for what I have into it financially, it really does an amazing job, and can really give me good details
I
quickly.
need to have you come out to our, we live on Lake Clearwater.
Yep.
And there's like 4 or 5 lakes right around us.
I wonder, I think Mike might have already one, but
maybe it's right off of kind of net. And I fly my drone all over, but I was just trying to search our lake one day, just trying to do some drone deploy stuff on it to see the depth of it and everything. So I discovered it's about 44 feet deep. And then there's some shallow areas, but who knows in those deep areas? I think it's spring fed, so who knows what's down there? I'd love to get an ROV down there.
I'll be happy to get in there.
I'd love to get an ROV down there.
We've got this one. Vern has a 5-fish tethered ROV. It's a cool unit. When we can't get a diver in, we put it in where there's been an aggressive gator, or we put it in where something's gotten stuck. We also will, if we need to, we can take a paddleboard out to recover this. Every now and then we get, one of the limitations is the thrusters can get vegetation stuck in them, and now you're in a left turn. So I've got to give full right, full opposite rudder just to bring it back to shore. If it goes too far from me, usually the video transmission cuts out before my remote controller, but so you can see it starting to get fuzzy. So I'll turn it around if the pond's too big. But usually with ponds that big, we'll deploy the boat. But I have run this, beyond range before. I also have programmed the controllers to, if they lose connection with the joystick, with the remote controller, it will turn on both thrusters not full forward, but forward at about 15 to 20%. Well, in my environment, I'm not in the ocean, I'm in a pond. So eventually that thing's going to hit the side and I can walk around and go get it. So it's kind of my built-in recovery. It won't return home.
Return to home, yeah.
Well, it'll return to the side, side of the pool. Yeah. So we use that. And then as far as drones, which is, what your audience is into, we're expanding with drones. So Vern has, we have something called the Garmin Striker Cast, which puts a depth and a sonar sounding on your phone. And it's about the size of like a tennis ball or racquetball. And it's something you normally cast with a fishing pole. And I use to check depth before I put this in. Because if it's only 4 or 5 feet deep, the car roof is not going to be. You're going to be able to see it. And there's probably not a car in there unless it's really sunken in the silt. So
you ever do intercoastal searches?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, especially boat ramps and stuff like that. So what Vern's done is he's taken the Striker Cast and he's attached it to his drone, and he's got a little bit of payload capability. So there's spots where we'll come up and the fence will be so high and the water will be so far from the fence that even standing in the back of a truck bed and casting, which I've done and been able to hit a pond to get depth, we can't always hit them. So he can take the drone and fly this little bobber and dip it. and we can be on shore 300 feet away and go, oh, that's 9 feet deep. We have to run this pond. Or, oh, it's 3 feet deep and full of weeds. Great. We can ignore this one and move on. We don't have to ask for access or get some other type of access in. Besides fences, the other place it makes sense is we run into a lot of ponds where when the person went missing, there was little to no vegetation. Now that little to no vegetation is a 30-foot tall tree line that we would have to hack through with machetes just to get the striker cast in there to see if it's 3 feet or 30 feet. Well, now he can take a drone over the top of all those trees, go out in the middle of the pond and say, hey, Ken, it's 30 feet. We need to hack through this. Or, hey, it's 3 feet. Let's hit the next one. So that's what we're using aerial drones for. We're also using aerial drones for looking for access. We'll pull up to a spot and you may not be able to see, from Google Earth, you might only see tree line all the way around the pond. Well, he might fly the drone down to the middle of the pond and give me a 360 camera view, and we might find, oh, yeah, there's treetops here, but there's access. Someone's driving a truck in there, so we can get around. Or there's a hole, or we'll find a homeless camp or something like that, where there's access to walk in from a side that we can't see. So we're using it for that. We're using it for surface sonar. We can't put a sonar on the aerial drone yet. They're just too heavy for the types of drones that we have. I'm sure that some of those larger ones we saw at the show could probably handle it.
Matrice could handle it. Yeah.
But here's the problem with even if you could handle the weight of the batteries and all that, and the transmission, because now you're shooting video via HDMI transmitter. The problem is with side scan is it has to be dragged. So now you're trying to hold that drone across the surface and bring it across. It's much easier to put this thing in. So there's limitations for what we do and don't use the drones for. But then we also have the sub, and I kind of chide Vern a little bit because we had found, I think, 7 vehicles in one spot, and there was also like an aluminum boat hull in the bottom, like a recovery style boat in the bottom, and I had put tethers on every one with a number so we can tell the police, number 1 is a sunken boat, number 2 is a Chevy, number 3 is a Ford. These are the license plates we do have, these are license plates we don't. So when they run them, they go, oh, this one's connected to drive-by shooting and someone put it in there. We want to get to that one. Which one is it? Oh, it's bobber number 7. So they'll, we use pool noodles because they're inexpensive instead of our expensive buoys. We just cut up pool noodles and put a number on them, and the police know number. Oh, I want to get to number 6. That's the car. That's the BMW we're looking for. So he's down there, and he's gonna take his 5 fish down there and get some cool ROV shots of the submerged stuff that we just dived. And we've already moved on to the next spot, and he's gonna spend some time getting some good shots because the water's clear. I get this call from Vern, like, I need a diver. It's like,
Ken, you should find something exciting to do with your life, my
I
friend.
know. So he calls me up. He says he needs a diver. I go over there, and the line that I do to the surface with the pool noodle had got stuck into one of his impellers and was wrapped up. So I got to go and swim over there with my snorkel gear. So he's got this great shot of me where his 5 fish is sitting there stuck with line going through 2 of the props and 2 of the thrusters, and I pull up in my gear and I look it in the eye and I pull out my little dive knife and go and then I cut his drone free. So he's got the whole thing on video and it's hilarious. So I give him a hard time about that. That said, he's got a whole bunch of tools. He has a 8-foot pond prowler type boat like mine. I think his is like a bass hunter. And so we use these small plastic boats that are easy to launch into, you'll see the other teams have inflatables. Well, inflatables pop and they're 14 feet long. You have to have a big trailer or a truck. You have to inflate them and deflate them. We just decided plastic boats are a lot more durable and we can get them in and out a lot easier. So that's what we've been doing. So my boat and Vern's boat are kind of the bigger ones, but they're faster on the water. Mike's boat is a little bit smaller, but it's a little slower on the water. So he does pond hopping, and then we use these for the smaller things that we can just toss in real quick. So we really, across all 3 teams, are kind of covering the whole thing. Vern also runs other adventures besides search and recovery. So he has a hangar bay where he has 4 or 5 drones plus his sub all on the boat, and he can take the whole thing out on an adventure, and he can launch an aerial and turn around and launch a sub and launch a sonar, and it all comes back and lands on a little. He's got the helo landing pad deck built on the front of this boat. It's cool. So what he's done is he lives primarily in North Carolina, and then also has a small RV down here in Florida where we connect. And he started working cases up there, and he's been using SAR-topo and beating the bush and looking for missing persons up there, on land, possibly murder cases. And one of them led to a pond where a gentleman was living in his car, but next to a pond. And the other gentleman who was fighting with him has a deer stand with his rifle pointing right towards this guy's property. So maybe he accidentally shot this guy and threw him in the water. We don't know. So Vern did, witness interviews with hostile witnesses, neighbors that don't want him there, bush beating on multiple days, and finally brought an 80-page report to the sheriff and said, hey, I have a theory that there could be something in this water. Unlikely, but we have to clear it because here's a deer stand, there's the water, here's a deer carcass that the guy shot and left there. So could he have mistaken this guy for deer and accidentally killed him and then threw him in the water? Possibly. So he arranged for the police to bring their drone out. They ran thermal drones, they ran subsurface ROV, and he ran his kayak sonar, and they were able to clear that whole property and then move on to the next set of clues. But they made a training day out of it as well for their law enforcement, because he's a drone expert. So he was able to, they also fixed their drone or sent it off for service because it needed service. So he's been able to, go above and beyond what we do and just search and recovery and kind of take the investigations to another professional level using the tools that you guys use every day.
Wow.
So I've got one more for you. I know we're burning time.
We got about
cool.
almost 7 minutes. Yeah.
All right. This one's easy because I wasn't involved. So we had been looking for Sandra Lee Lemire for over a year, maybe a year and a half. I had been on a handful of those searches. Mike had been on many, many searches. We have good participation from the family. We have not so great participation from the Orlando detectives that were in charge of the case. He was also the detective on the case where the mother put the 2 children into the car into the water. So he's been on TV a lot, and he's doesn't want to work with amateurs like us. So he wouldn't really give us any clues. He says, file a FOIA if you want to know anything, like, hey, we're a free resource. We can work with you. And when you do work with us, we solve cases. Go talk to these other 5 departments. He just wouldn't budge, wouldn't give us the time of day. And we filed a FOIA. It was blacked out. We got no information. And the family kept hounding him at our request. And one day he was on vacation in Scotland